I picked up the August issue of Rook back in August whenever it came out. Is it August? Yeah, it's August. Issue number 5 of Rook. I like the cover, and after watching Thinking Critical's overview of the series of Rook Exodus, I decided that after watching one good review of the series, one guy who read it and said, you know, I really like this series, I like the artwork, I like the story, I decided to give it a chance. I had read the Ghost Machine preview issues where they had all of the snippets of story, the setups, the pitches in one place. I thought that was a really cool idea. I personally think they should have stuck with that idea where they sold a Ghost Machine magazine where you had each of the stories, each of the issues contained in one thing. Maybe the Geiger series, the Junkyard Joe, and then Rook all in one book where you could buy it as a package deal. Regardless, I wasn't that interested in the Rook series after reading that magazine because it seemed like it was just going to be another, okay, this is a series pitch, this is a Netflix pitch, just by the way of the writing. And I had also not heard anything about the series Geiger, Rook, anything at all that says these are really good series that is worth me going to the comic book store to pay every single month or every other month in this case to get the books, because it seems like if that was the preview and that was supposed to be the rest of it, then it wasn't all that interesting. I decided to give it a fair shake after watching the video, but not after watching Geoff Johns and Jason Fabok themselves do a 1 hour long interview about the series they're writing with Sasha from Casually Comics. That made me want to buy it even less, actually. It was a very boring interview, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. Really, go watch the interview. And if you can find anything in there that's that would really make you want to buy the book, please tell me what it is, because I couldn't see it in there. Anyway, I just reread this since I'm reviewing it so late, and I remember exactly why my opinion hasn't changed on the series. I think that Jason Fabok as an artist is able to excel more than he ever has, not only because his skill as an artist is increasing over the years, but also because he has much more freedom to illustrate whatever it is he wants to illustrate. And he's illustrating animals, he's illustrating nature, and if you look at that interview, a lot of the crux of this story is Jason Fabok said, oh yeah, I created a really cool mask, and I sent it to Geoff Johns and thought, isn't this mask really cool? And Geoff Johns says, oh, but what if there was a story? And I'm not putting too much hyperbole in there. So it opens with fight or flight. It's every living thing's core instinct of survival. And you have a pig start talking to Rook. And from everything that I heard about the series, all the dialogue that I had read from Geoff Johns, everybody talks Geoff Johns as this big deal. And I think he's an alright writer for the most part. He can write stories that people read. And maybe that sounds like an odd thing to say, but it all makes sense in my head. I don't like his dialogue that much. It's all passable, it all works, but it's that evening television CW style writing of dialogue that is like, you're kind of stuck in the 2010s, and I'll give you an example here. He says, I hit my head. Pigs don't talk. I'm not a pig, I'm a boar. It's okay though, that awful man pretending to be swine called me much worse. I'm glad the wolves ate him. Oh, is that a terrible thing to say? It's not quippy, but it's that MCU dialogue that everybody kind of disliked. So you have Rook in this forest. This forest is burning down, and from what I've heard in the story, Rook has trouble controlling his birds, his crows. He doesn't really like the crows, and they're dealing a lot with this fight or flight stuff. And throughout this story, you start getting flashbacks of Rook's past on the farm with his father as he's trying to reconnect to the birds. And they tie him up, they turn him into a scarecrow, and he's shouting at them. You get really cool, very open shots like this throughout the book. I enjoy these pieces. Geoff Johns, Jason Fabok is a good artist, I have to say. But when I have my criticisms of people like Jason Fabok and Geoff Johns, my criticism is more so in the nuance than it is in the entire execution. It takes a good artist to lay out a page like this. It takes a competent and good writer to write a story, to do this many issues of a series. The thing is, it doesn't take a great writer, and it takes a great artist to do what is unexpected and still do it well. And what I've noticed with Jason Fabok is he gets tied to some of these more flat layouts in the panel layouts, but he also gets tied to flat angles. And I say that where this is obviously an upshot, you're looking up at the person. It's more so it's a front-facing headshot, or it's a front-facing headshot of his teeth gritting, or it's a very perfect-looking image of a fist. And that's kind of where I get a little bit tuned out, where I say, even though the execution is good, even though the anatomy is good, I don't quite latch on to the intensity. I don't quite follow the ideas exactly as I feel like they're trying to be shown, illustrated. Skipping some pages here, he's talking to Pumbaa, who is telling our character, this is how what do they call him? This is how my guy commanded us. You know, this is how the swine commanded the swine. And he's trying to teach Rook how to command the birds, where he's saying he opened himself to us. He did this, he did that. And Rook is trying to use the birds as a way to clear his way out. And I think we get this nice page here where what Jason Fabok seems to excel at most in illustrating the series is these very open, establishing shots of these landscapes, and he's very good at expressing the depth within the landscape and utilizing the panel composition to do so. You have the forest, the trees on fire, these giant smokestacks. You have the birds up here, and then you have blue to contrast with the red. It's Brad Anderson, of course, but the silhouette of Rook, and then of course you have the mountainscape in the background. And really, it's hard to show it here. You really need the book in your hand. It's a very, very well done establishing shot. It's a really well done image. So they're reasoning their way out. He's trying to figure out, okay, did your father burn down the farm, this and that? I built the scarecrow, but I failed. The birds still came. I share my fears with the birds. He's starting to communicate with them. We're not cowards. We are Rook. And that right there, we are Rook. Does that sound familiar? I don't know if you guys watched the Flash series or the Arrow series back on the CW. You had a lot of that. Whenever Team Flash was like, we are Flash. You are the Flash. It was that... It's kind of weird, and it's very repetitive, and it's very predictable. So he jumps. And what you get whenever he jumps, as his father is begging for the rain in his flashback, and the pig continues to be jokey. And you see why that dialogue doesn't quite work. It feels like I'm all over the place here. But with the pig's dialogue being, I didn't mean to upset you at a moment like this, Rook. The last moment for the both of us, it seems... I'm sorry, I guess you're right. Pigs shouldn't talk. And he's having these very intense flashbacks. What I saw with my father wasn't what happened. He tried to save the farm and everybody in it, just like I'm trying to save all these animals. I can hear him. And he says, I can hear the leader. My God, there's a leader. Fight or flight, he says. You have it wrong. We're more than that. We are fight and flight. Ba-da-ba-ba. So he jumps. And they start flying with him, and he embraces his character, and it sets up the Season 2 mystery about his father. And then he wakes up, and the entire issue was a dream. Spoiler alert? Is it too late to say that? I hear all of them. You get cool shots. These are cool shots. Again, these are cool. I like them. And it sets up fight and flight. Choose your animal. And the next issue is going to be Rook versus Ursan, the bear warden. Warden, that's what they're called. Ursa and Rook. The brawl for it all. Cool little setup. But all in all, and I'm going to give you guys my entirely honest opinion, which you're absolutely free to disagree with. I think this is a story. There is a narrative, and these are characters who act. And this is good art. The thing is, to me, that's all it is. Seeing Wes from Thinking Critical rave about this book, I feel like he has more enthusiasm for it than the creators themselves. And I only say that because I watched an hour or 2 hour long interview with the creators about this very book. And what I could mainly take from that interview is this page right here. Choose your animal. And in that interview, I can't tell you how many times between Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok, they very unenthusiastically told Sasha from Casually Comic, they said, yeah, you know, and when we're writing this book, we think, well, what if there was a whale warden? Or maybe a warden of spiders? Or maybe this warden? I mean, everybody has a favorite animal. What's your favorite animal? And that's kind of our writing process here. I couldn't help but laugh. There were a couple scenes in here where I couldn't help but laugh. The fight and flight. It's that thing that the kid on the playground decides that he's going to have a Star Wars, but also, no, a sci-fi, but also a Western. And you have the person who thinks that they're creating the coolest thing in the world by putting two things together. And it's kind of cheesy. It's kind of corny. It exists, it works, and if you're a big fan of CW shows and evening television on CBS or ABC, then I'm sure that this is just right up your alley. But when a comic book and a piece of writing material of a solo writer, not an entire writer's room of writers who are being paid to write according to trends, writes, and it feels more like a setup for a next season of a television series, and they're writing this in a comic book that's so well illustrated as this one is, it feels almost like a waste of a comic book, if that makes any sense. And I say that in the most respectful way possible. It seems like Jeff Johns is much better at writing television than he is at writing comic books, because I've read Doomsday Clock, I've read the Batman Earth 1, and he's always trying to make something read like a television program or something along those lines, rather than making a really cool, very inspired comic book. And it's almost replaceable to the point that anybody of those television writers' rooms could have written this. And Jason Fabok, I mean, his art continues to excel. He's not tied to long-running characters. He can draw what he wants to draw. He can draw animals. He clearly has a lot of enthusiasm for that. He has a more of a realistic style in the way that he renders things in his proportions. But all in all, and I mean this in the most sincere of ways, the series just feels uninspired. And I don't feel like it's worth going to the shop and paying $4 to $5 for it every month or every 2 months, because it's, what's your favorite animal? If that's really what it boils down to, which is the main thing I took from that interview, if any of you guys took something else, please tell me. But if that's what it boils down to, then really there's not a whole lot here to be read at the end of the day. And that's how I feel about this. If you guys see other views, maybe you guys like this. I mean, I gotta say, I really like this cover. I like the motifs that Jason Fabok is taking from on this cover. But that's what I take from this book. You guys are welcome to disagree. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this book. And what do you guys think could be better than that? What are some books that you guys think are better, and what are some books that you guys think are worse? Because I think comparing these things to other comic books that are out on the stands and other comic books that have been out is a really good metric to see where this stands with people. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Subscribe, like the video, comment, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video.